Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Alhamdulillah, all praises be to Allah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Peace and blessings be upon our Prophet Muhammad, his family, and his companions. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace and blessings be upon you all. Today we have a special guest. Her name is Sister Katie, that I've known her for how long? 2, 3 years now?
Yeah, a little over 2 years.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah. She came all the way about an hour and a half from my home so we can sit together and have a beautiful conversation about her story and how she became Muslim. So you're going to tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us how were you raised and how was your upbringing in this country?
Yeah, so I was born into a Catholic family, and we did go to church on Sundays and everything. We went to mass, and I had my CCD school and everything, which is like the children's school that you go to.
Mm-hmm.
And I was born in Ohio, and when we moved down here to Texas, we went to a Catholic church for like a year, and then my mom somehow started taking us to a Baptist church. I remember in Catholic mass in the church, they had statues of the saints, and they would even have plaques that would explain who the saint was and, a little bit about them and all of that. And that was interesting. But it never made sense to me looking at that, thinking, that we need to ask them for help, because it's like, what are they going to do? They're dead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say, whatever good life they lived, they're not going to be of help. And even as a kid, I recognized that. And I thought, that doesn't make any sense. And it wasn't until I was a teenager when I was hearing that they believe that Jesus is God. And I automatically was like, is he though? I don't think so. And so I never really believed that. And so I can't say that I was ever really Christian, because if you just grow up in something and you don't actually accept the faith, can you claim it? No, I don't think so. Right. Then you're just cultural,
Yeah.
So
it's so interesting that you're saying that you were in Fort Worth and you became Baptist, because the Baptists are very active in that place, and they had Southwestern Baptist Seminary, which is one of the largest and the strongest denominations in that area. And I used to study there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh. So, and they used to train on how to do evangelism, to go to overseas. So sometimes they would come and knock on the doors and talk to you, just like the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yes.
Some of them are even worse than that. Moving forward, you got married and have kids, right?
I got married and had kids, and my ex-husband is not religious at all. During the divorce, at one point when I was learning about Islam, I was curious what his beliefs really were, and so he has that the clock. What is it? The watchmaker theory. What's it called? Where basically God just has wound us up and then just let everybody go.
Yeah, they have a name for it. It's called deisms. It came from the First World War or Second World War, where people say that God just created us and left us, and and you do your own destiny. In Arabic, we call it the Qadariya, means like Allah just created us and left us. And there are some people who believe in that, but there are very few comparing to the mainstream that we have. So now moving forward, how did you start to learn about Islam?
My very first, when it was not serious, but I worked with a woman named Hira. And mashallah, she's very sweet and very understanding and patient. And I remember during Ramadan, we were working together, and she was like, "Oh no, I can't have any. I'm fasting," because I offered something, and she was like, "Oh no, I'm fasting," and I was like, "Oh, is that the time already, because I know what it is. I didn't know a whole lot, but I knew like little bits that I had picked up here and there. And so she was like, yeah, no, yeah, so we're, can't eat anything. And I was like, okay, I get it.
Mhm.
And I even offered water or something, and she was like, no, can't even have water. I was like, you can't even have water. And I was like, that question, how do you everybody asked that question. Yeah. And you don't realize it. You don't realize it as a non-Muslim that you're asking a question that literally everyone asks. You can't have water.
Yeah.
What do you mean? I, learned a little bit from her, and that was just more so that I didn't do anything to offend her or anything, because I'd never worked with a Muslim before. I didn't really ever have a conversation that I know of with a Muslim before that. In fact, I think the first time I heard about it was on the bus at school in high school. I was a freshman, and they were handing out New Testaments to the kids on the bus. They do that. I don't know if you know that they do that. They see kids on the bus, and they'll just stand outside the bus, and all of the kids are reaching to grab these books that these people are just handing out for free. And you know how kids are. Oh my God, it's free. I want one. And so they're grabbing these New Testaments, and they're just these tiny little ones.
Yeah, I know.
And so somebody was talking, and they ended up saying something about Islam, and they were like, oh yeah, it's basically like Christianity. It's even has like Gabriel and stuff like that in there. Jesus is in there, and lots of the same characters. And so I was like, it's a book, like it's a fictional book. And so I was like, that was the first time I heard that there was a lot of similarities between the two, and I knew nothing at that point. And so that was the first thing I ever heard, and that was interesting in high school. And then I joined an English learning group on Kick, which is an app. So whenever lockdown happened, I was, tired of not being able to communicate with anybody, not being able to go out and talk to people and all of that, because we were all locked in our houses. And so I was like, what can I do?
That was at the time of COVID.
Yes, during COVID. And
which year was that?
2020.
Okay.
So this was in 2020, and I downloaded it towards the end of March. I clicked on the hashtag to look for groups. They had example hashtags that you could look up. And so I clicked on learning, because I thought, okay, this will be a safe choice, because there's a lot of not good stuff on Kick. And anyway, so I'm like, learning, I can learn something. That would be cool. And so I'm looking, and I see this English learning group, and I'm like, oh, I could help. I type in full sentences. I don't use any sort of shorthand. And so I thought, at least I can be a good example. And then maybe I can talk to some interesting people, not necessarily local, but they could be from wherever. And then I could learn something too. Well, I did learn something. The group was full of Muslims, and not all, but a bunch of Muslims were in there. And I ended up making friends with several of them, and then, having conversations, asking questions, and I started learning. And I thought, okay, I'm going to listen to the Quran. And then in May, during Ramadan, I started listening to the Quran, and I really started listening to it a lot. And I had it going in Arabic and in English. Again, I have ADHD, so I didn't catch like all of it. Also, I would listen to it when I was doing other things, cleaning and all of that, so I maybe was a little distracted. And so I listened to it even going to sleep, because it was so peaceful and comforting. And so it was helping me during this really hard time. I had decided to get divorced in November of 2019. Said no.
Okay, hello. Perfect.
Me.
So let me ask you this key question. Why do you feel that there's a need or necessity that you have to believe, like from all the searches and all the things? Because a lot of people, they're like, I don't believe in anything, I'm just living my life.
Sure.
So
I don't know. Like, why continue that search? Why try and, force myself into it? Oh, for a long time, I didn't try actually. So I did just coast along for a long time, distracted by family and friends and whatever else is going on.
From your reading the Quran, what really attracted you to it, and what did really sounded something that it is a part of you, or like a part of something that you want to be a part of it?
What the Quran itself, being peaceful, and like it's like an emotional shift when you're listening to it, and it's like, I've never felt anything like that before. And that may be an emotional response, I'm sure, not the logical response. So I can't say that the Quran was the reason. I know a lot of people have that as their reason for why they converted. Mine was more logical.
So tell me
although
those,
I do
those
love,
reasons.
So some of the big reasons were, the scientific miracles. And I know a lot of people are like, don't like rely on those or anything. And I'm like, yeah, but it's sense. True. It's but they're in there. And when you learn about it, and then you think, how can he have known about that, being the time that he was in, the place that he was in, and everything? And it's like, that was a big part. But then also learning hearing about the lifestyle, because Islam is not just a religion, it's a way of life. So when you look at the practices in Islam, and then you hear what some of the wisdom behind it is, you go, oh, that makes sense. And then after so much of you saying, oh, that makes sense, oh, that makes sense, I'm just over and over again, I'm telling this to my friends, and I'm like, yeah, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. And eventually it's like, you get it. You're like, that makes sense. This is the most logical way to live. And that's what it claims to be, And so after a while of that, I was like, I really believe in this. And I remember I told this part in the speech that I did for Al Ansar, but I had surgery in January of 2021, and I went downstairs at 3 a.m. to take a pain pill from because I was in so much pain, and I felt fine other than the pain until I was standing there about to open the bottle, and then all of a sudden I felt like I got really lightheaded. Everything started to go black, and I started to feel myself slowly falling to the floor. And I just remember thinking, no, I haven't taken my shahada yet. I don't want to die not Muslim. And but I didn't know it in Arabic. I didn't have it memorized. So I thought, okay, I'll just say it in English, and maybe that'll count. I don't know. Yes, it does. I had not started praying or anything. I hadn't, learned. I was just still watching, different YouTube videos and everything. And so I just, in English, I said, there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his.
Oh. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Allah guided you. Alhamdulillah. Yeah. SubhanAllah. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, so I didn't know if that
did you know any friends here that helped you to take your shahada in Arabic?
No, I'll get to that.
Okay.
Because I wasn't even there yet. I thought, well, I don't know if that counts, and I don't know if I'm really ready. So I, whenever I wasn't in that moment of emergency, then my brain, shaitan took over again, and it was like, are you though? Yeah. I don't think you're really Muslim. I don't think you really meant that. And so I was like, yeah, I don't know. Because you know, I'm so worried. I know that I still have things that I'm doing that I'm not supposed to be doing. I was wearing hijab, actually. I started wearing hijab in
Before you became
August.
Muslim?
Yeah, in August of 2020, only a few months after I started learning.
Yeah.
And I loved it so much. And I loved it so much. And I could tell the difference, you know, in the way that people treated me. And it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. I've only had a couple of negative things happen, but I've had so many positive things happen. So I loved it. And that was another thing that kept me going. Learning. Anyways, so after that moment, I thought, oh, I'm still doing things I'm not supposed to. And I don't want to tarnish that clean slate, because everybody talked about how you get a clean slate whenever you took your shahada. And I thought, oh, I don't want to do anything, you know, I don't want to continue doing these things that I still haven't been able to give up. And so I stayed from taking the shahada with someone in Arabic and all of that, and thinking officially I am Muslim. So when after about a month, I ended up having a dream. I still didn't have the shahada in Arabic memorized. I'd only heard it a couple of times. And I had a dream, and the entire night I repeated La ilaha illallah over and over again in my sleep, in my dream. And it was literally all night long. And I remember waking up and telling my friend, and he was like, what? I was like, really? Then and it didn't hit me like, yeah. I was like, yeah, it was weird.
Yeah.
I was just so like, you know, airhead about it, you know, not taking any realization of the gravity of it. And so I was not taking it as like the biggest sign of, hey, you're ready, just go do it. Until I had another dream. And in that dream, I was in a room, and in the middle of the room, there was like a tear in space. And from the tear, there were these rays of light coming out, and they were just kind of like softly dancing, softly moving. And it was the most beautiful light I've ever seen. And I don't even know how to describe it. It's kind of like pastel colors, but also like a diamond shining at the same time.
That's good.
And I just remember the whole dream that I was staring at that light and just repeating Allah. And I remember like I was leaning into to be like closer and get like a closer look and focus more intently. And after that, it's like, you know, after so much, I know I believed, and then you get these signs, and it's like the push that you really need. So I took my shahada with my friend, who is now my husband, and still my friend. And and that was in March of 2021 when I ended up taking that.
MashaAllah. That's beautiful. That's a beautiful story.
Thank you.
So tell me about your friends, your family. How did they take that after you became Muslim?
Well, like I said, I started wearing a hijab in August.
That was before you said your shahada.
It was before I said my shahada. And but this was just the initial reaction. I had accidentally forgotten some of my books at my mom's house, and she had already found them, and you know, so they were on Islam and you know, different, like the different histories and stuff that happened, because I love history. And so it wasn't exactly about religion. So maybe she thought, oh, she's just learning about the history, because I do love history, like I said, and I learn about all kinds of different things. And so she could have written it off in her head. But in September, because for a few weeks I was only wearing the hijab to like the grocery store and everything. We were still locked down, and everything was pretty closed off, you know, like very few things were opening. So really my only opportunity to go out was to the grocery store. And so I would wear it to the grocery store. Whenever I would go to her house, I would wear it when I was driving, but I would take it off in the driveway. And then one day I was like, I'm just going to leave it on. I'm just going to leave it on and see what she says. So I wore it inside, and she was up on a ladder getting something from on top of the fridge, and she looked over and she was like, what do you have on your head? And I was like, it's a scarf.
Wow. Okay.
She was like, and she finished what she was doing, and then she got down, and then she asked me again. She was like, no, really, what are you wearing? And I was like, it's a scarf. She was like, why are you wearing it? And I was like, well, I've been learning about Islam, and and so I started wearing a scarf, and I still just called it a scarf because I'm not trying to scare her too much. And she goes, well, you look like a babushka. And I was like,
what is that?
It's a Russian grandmother, but
okay.
We're not Russian or anything.
Okay.
She just said it. And then another time actually was it fairly recently. It was funny. Back in November. I was painting, and it was at that house that I was trying to sell, and my friend had brought her family, which included teenage boy and her husband. So I had just my under hijab on, which are kind of funny looking in the back, whenever you see them. And she said I looked like a Smurf. And I was like, she thinks I'm being brainwashed. And I was like, that's funny, since you tried to brainwash me for 35 years and failed, but somehow I can be brainwashed now.
Yeah.
It's
no,
okay.
I understand. No.
Yeah. So my stepdad has his own thoughts. He has a thought about the Quran, actually. He thinks that the Arabs have kept the real version of the Quran for themselves, and what they give us is like an abridged version. So he was asking me the size of my Quran and like the thickness of it, and I was like, I mean, I don't know, like the one that I have personally, because you can get different thicknesses. Like it just depends on the print and everything. Yeah, and the print and mine is a translation. And so I was like, I don't know, it's a small one. It's like this thick. And he goes, see, because he did some work for some Saudi princes at one point on their airplane. And he said he saw their Qurans, and he was like, it was this thick. It was this. And so his thought is, because it's this thick, that it must have more in there. Well,
it's just a bigger font, and they have more spacing and more decorations on their sides, and that's why it's more favored.
I told him, you're literally judging a book by its cover. You don't. I was like, did you read it? And he was like, well, no, it's in Arabic. So how do you know what it said? How do you don't have any proof for this claim? And he got really mad, and then he started yelling at me about how I would never, they will never accept me as one of their own, like I'm doing this because I'm looking for a community or something. And I'm like, I mean, that's okay if they never do. I'm not trying to be them. I'm not trying to be Arabic. I'm not trying to
and it's so funny that you're in a community that they have the least Arab in it. So
I know, funny, right? I think we have mostly Pakistanis around here.
So tell me a little bit about your lifestyle after you became Muslim. Like, if you want to compare between before and after, how do you like your life right now?
And I love my life now. It's a lot more, I don't know, I feel more secure now. And even though I went through a divorce and everything, and then I had a lot of financial instability, I still felt more secure, more safe. I felt safer. I don't know how to explain it.
I understand.
Yeah.
How's your relationship with Allah after Islam?
I mean, I don't know that I had one before, so I can only say that now I have one, and now I'm learning, and I'm trying to learn, you know, who Allah is and what that means, and to think of it is kind of like a really heavy thing, you know, when you try and think about it, try and visualize yourself standing in front of him, and to try and think about that concept of how much power he really has, and how he can control everything. And it's just, it's like really heavy on your brain trying to think about it. Whenever I'm in prayer and I'm trying to imagine myself standing in front of him, it's the best way for me personally, because otherwise I get distracted by every little thing, you know, whenever I'm in prayer. So I really have to try and focus on something. And so I try and focus on him. I try to think about him.
Okay, that's awesome. So now, how is your relationship with the Muslim community, and what message would you give them if you actually were in a place where you can give them a message or an advice?
I don't know. I love the Muslim community.
What
get
what makes them
overwhelmed.
unique? Like, what is the difference between, like, for example, being in the community within the church and in a Muslim community here in Dallas, for example?
I know some people are not going to agree with me, but I feel so much less judgment from the Muslim community than I did from the Christian
Is that right?
community.
Wow.
Whenever I would go to church, I always felt like I never belonged with them, and like they never tried to reach out to me. They never were as welcoming, and it can just be my experience.
And that's actually very typical. I'll tell you what, like a typical white woman going to church, you don't see a lot of attention for her. But for example, if it's a Muslim Syrian refugee or Iraqi, for example, or something like that, that came to the church seeking help, you see that church will give them more attention, showing more love and more care than being like a typical American. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I could see that happening. Because they also, you know, they want to show a good face and to be like, we're loving and welcoming, and you should come be Christian and all of that. So my experience with the Muslim community has really been very positive.
That's good.
I go to Al Ansar, so it's mostly reverts there, really.
So right.
So
it's so true.
My experience with like born Muslim is less. So, but everyone that I've met so far has been wonderful. And
that's great. Okay. What message, like, if you have the opportunity to give a message to the non-Muslims, what is the message that you would give them?
Oh, I would just say that, you know, don't close off your heart to the possibility that Islam is the truth, and to just be open-minded and listen and be sincere. That's the biggest thing. I think if you are listening with sincerity and you are trying to learn the truth with all sincerity, then you'll come to Islam, because it just makes the most sense. And I just feel like it's the truth. God is one, and he sent messengers to tell us the best way to live and what he wants us to do. And that's it. And that's it. It's so easy. It's so easy. They just make it so complicated, thinking about every little rule, and they're like, it's so controlling. My mom said that to me too. I was like, it's really not. It's a way of life. And so once you adjust to that different way of life, and then you see the benefits, you see the benefits of it, and you can feel the truth in it. You can feel that it's correct. Once you start making those adjustments, they become easier.
Oh wow! I mean, what a story! And I
You
really
have helped
appreciate
me
it.
a lot.
Yeah.
Going to Al Ansar every Saturday has really, you know,
Alhamdulillah.
I love the lessons. I know sometimes people start talking to me
Yeah.
during the lesson, and then I'm like,
Mm.
and I'm
Yeah.
like trying to pay attention, and
No. Yeah.
I'm like, okay, let's.
I'm so glad,
But
Alhamdulillah.
yeah,
And so thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for finally coming. Like you've been 2 years friend with me.
yeah,
Finally,
you know.
yeah, I wanted to take like I wanted to listen to your story for the longest time.
Thank you.
And you know, you're also such a wonderful friend. You know, you're the coolest friend, one of the
Thank you.
coolest friends that I know, seriously. And thank you so much for giving us your time. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, guide your family and your
I mean,
family, your parents,
yeah,
your
pray for them.
ex, and everybody, and protect your children also. You know, and yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for listening. And please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube. My YouTube is Ruba Kiwar, and Jazakumullah khair. May Allah reward you with goodness. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله العظيم. I say this and I ask Allah for forgiveness. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace and blessings be upon you all.